afternoon. Let me tell you a little story. When I was 8 years old, I got a letter in the mail. It said, Riya Deshmukh, you have been selected to our school's magnet program. Now, magnet was a kind of super gifted program, but me, being 8 years old, I didn't even know what it was, and quite honestly, I didn't care. So, on the first day of school, I walked into this new, unfamiliar environment called the gifted program. As I stand here today, 8 years later, with half my life spent in gifted programs, I can look back. As I look back, I see the effects that these programs have had on myself and my peers, both gifted and non-gifted. These programs have undoubtedly had effects on those of us that were part of them, the gifted students. The good, most of you are probably already familiar with. It's what first comes to mind when you think gifted. And it is true that for years, studies have shown that gifted students often achieve higher levels of success than their peers, including higher levels of education, more favorable occupations, and more positive reflections of their own lives. But what's little discussed is the negative effects that these programs can have on gifted students. An example of this would be something called gifted child syndrome. Now, before you all start freaking out, no, it's not contagious. In fact, it's not even a condition. It's not even a medical condition at all. It's a term coined online to describe the common experiences and characteristics seen in gifted kids in later childhood and adulthood. Some of these include things like extreme procrastination, a fear of failure, and destructive perfectionism. Sound familiar, any of my fellow gifted kids? Well, even though this may be common, if it doesn't, that's fine too. Because each child has a different reaction to these programs. I've seen peers walk out crushed under the expectations that come with these programs sometimes. Others have walked out better and improved people because of the experiences they had. While a third group have somehow developed a sense of superiority over the others. But who are these others? Well, in the US alone, 3 million students are part of gifted programs, which is about 6% of public school students in the US. This leaves the rest, 94%, as the so-called others, the ones who didn't make it into the academically oriented gifted programs we have today. Believe it or not, gifted programs affect these students as well. Let's take an example here. For instance, we have a student who's incredibly talented musically, and someday they may even go on to become a musical sensation. But right now, they're having trouble with their math homework. And because they don't have the academic gift like their gifted peers, they may feel like they're not good enough. Even if the magnitude of their musical talent is as great as the academic talent of their gifted peers, they may somehow feel like it's lesser just because it's not academic, because it's not considered gifted. So, this leads to the most significant impact that these programs have on kids both gifted and non-gifted alike. That is that they can change a student's self-perception. They can change how a student sees themselves, how they think about themselves. But you might be thinking, Riya, where is this change even coming from? Well, it's because many people view gifted programs and being part of one as a quality. But we need to remember the purpose of gifted programs. They're designed to be an opportunity, not an identity. They don't define who a person is or who they will be. I'm a gifted student, but that's not my only quality. Being gifted does not define who I am. Simply giftedness, statistically speaking, does give kids a better shot at success, but it's not the only way or any kind of prerequisite to get there. In fact, it's possible and even realistic for a non-gifted student to do as well or even better than a gifted student later in life. For example, as of recently, 739 of the world's billionaires, that's about 3 out of 10, had no bachelor's degree. That's right, they didn't even finish college, but they still became billionaires. Now, this isn't to say that you shouldn't go to college. Please stay in school, kids. But it does show that the level of academic talent that gifted programs measure is not always necessary to achieve success. Just academic giftedness isn't a measure of future accomplishment. It might be the indicator of it, but in the end, it alone doesn't change anything. So, looking to the future, how can we help ensure this success for every single student, whether they're gifted or not? Well, for one, we can consciously change and consider how these programs affect us, our students, and how we think about gifted programs and giftedness. Non-academic giftedness should also be acknowledged and encouraged because these talents can often be as advantageous and rewarding to the students that have them as gifted talents. Like I said before, just giftedness academically doesn't mean that you'll be successful in the future. Just that on its own doesn't guarantee anything. That's what we know in this moment. Today, that's what we know. Today, oh my gosh, it's all right. We all make mistakes, even the gifted ones. Let me get back to my point. Today, we know that gifted programs have lasting, huge effects on kids, both gifted and not. They change how a student can see themselves, and they change who a person becomes in the future. They can shape who they become in the future. And this change can be good or bad. Even though there might be problems with gifted programs today, they remain an invaluable resource to the students who are part of them. In fact, if it weren't for these programs and the incredible, dedicated educators behind them, I might not even be standing here in front of you all today. But that's as of this moment. Tomorrow, these programs might change, and so might the effects that come with them. And that's the best part about all of this. It's that the potential for that change is in our hands. We can identify and solve problems within our systems. We can consciously change how we think about giftedness, and we can support our kids, whether they're gifted or not. At the end of the day, there's just one thing that we need to remember, and that, in the wise words of Ethel Waters, is that we are all gifted. We are all gifted, and that is our inheritance. Thank you.